have I, in fact, been published? Because I claim I have. I say I'm a published game designer, published poet, award-winning published poet, and published screenwriter. But occasionally somebody calls me on my bullshit and says, "Oh yeah, I don't. What do you know? You're talking about the rules of drama, being negative and saying no about things. What do you know about being published? You've never been published. Blah 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 blah." Oh, what's this? Yes, I have in fact been published. I don't like to talk about it. I never really made any money off of it. I think I made $2,000 total. Nothing I've published has ever really gone anywhere. And, it's not what I really want to be the flag of my cornerstone unless it's related to, like, can I use the fact that I'm a published poet to help with my educational job? Then, yes, I self-published a role-playing game. It went through several names, several titles, and sold 15 copies. 15 copies. Before I realized it was a piece of crap. I then sold the rights to the said game because plenty of people told me that even though the game itself was crap, the skill system was one of the best skill systems they ever saw. So I made that available. I sold that. And that would go on to become parts of Fusion and parts of Silhouette. So yes, I am a published game designer. I self-published 2 games. That one, the project / the fly-by-night role-playing game, which was my attempt to do a multi-genre riffs type thing. And basically this is just crap. Yeah, I mean, the skill system I wrote is amazing. People have taken it and done way better things with it than when I originally wrote, but the rest of this is crap. I will be the first to say this is crap, but I published it. Now, on regards to my claims that I am a God, I need a new camera, screenwriter. Well, the movie that I wrote a screenplay for that actually got made was called Gideon's Run. I think there are maybe 5 copies of the DVD in the entire world, but it got made. I also wrote 2 porn movies. Not that that means much, but I wrote a porn film called Talk Hard, and I wrote a porn film whose name eventually became Aja Goes Deeper, but that wasn't the name I wrote it on. And yes, I wrote porn. I wrote 2 of them. I worked at a video store in the late 80s, early 90s, where, seeing screenwriters and porn stars and people in Studio City was not unusual, and everybody in the video store was writing screenplays, so it was like, kind of like you had to. I was friends with a couple porn stars. I played D&D with Kiki Dare, so I wrote a porn movie or 2. Oh, I also fucked a porn star. Yeah. So I also worked on a TV show called A Fistful of Fingers, which had 6 episodes on public access television in Van Nuys. I don't know if you could still find it anywhere. It was on late at night. It was a half-an-hour comedy sketch show that I did with Don Crandall, Ken Strang, and Kobe, whose name I can't remember. But it was called A Fistful of Fingers, and I wrote a screenplay for that with Don called 20,000 Logs Under the Sea. I wrote a lot of parody commercials with Don. I wrote a parody commercial called Salt Frosted Slugs. Most of the parody commercials on A Fistful of Fingers I wrote with Don. So yeah, and then I wrote 20,000 Logs Under the Sea. I wrote Starship Strippers with Don. So yeah, I wrote that. Those are a couple screenplays. I wrote a screenplay for a movie called Mrs. Winterbourne, which never got made. I wrote a couple other screenplays that I hold the rights to, but nobody's ever, optioned them. You can write screenplays. Anybody can write a screenplay. Anybody can be a published screenwriter and put their screenplays available at the Writers Guild to be purchased by a producer at some point in time. Scripts get circulated through Hollywood all the time. Screenplays get circulated through Hollywood all the time. If you write one, it doesn't disappear. It can sit on the shelves over at the Writers Guild for years and years and years, and then somebody picks it up and makes it, which is why the rights are so important. Because how many times has somebody made a movie and then somebody said, "Oh no, I wrote that movie, 15 years ago. You're stealing my idea, and now I'm going to sue you for $20 billion." So screenplays don't disappear if you go through the proper steps and make them available and get them copyrighted and put them out to the Writers Guild. So my screenplays are still out there somewhere. And I did make $2,000 off of Gideon's Run. So yes, published screenwriter. Published poet. Am I a published poet? I am a published award-winning poet whose poetry has appeared at the Dana Point Literary Society, the Humboldt Journal, Whippoorwill, and on several online sites. Have I published a poem recently? No, I haven't published a poem in over 8 years because poetry isn't really something I do anymore. I do now, when I do things like that, it's more like, I guess you would call it beat poem stories. So my stuff is a lot longer, it's a lot less poetic and more just sort of angry, dramatic beat poems. I've got one that I'm working on that's already like 8 pages long called COVID-19 is a Bully. It's technically a poem, but then the Iliad and the Odyssey are poems, and they're like 200 pages each. So yes, I am a published award-winning poet. Am I a published game designer? Yes, I am. My name appears in the following games in some form or another, or things that I have worked on have become the following games. So I'm sure there's going to be some I miss, but because I'm old and I don't remember things. But GURPS. Let's start with GURPS, because that's how I got started. Actually, technically, the first game I ever play tested, helped publish, was a game called Vigilante. Then there was a game called Heroes Always Lose and Villains Never Win. Then there was a game called Dragonborn. But really, GURPS and Artisolian were my first forays into working with other companies. And my big ones were probably the GURPS stuff, because I did GURPS Supers, GURPS IST, GURPS Time Travel. I was huge on GURPS Time Travel, GURPS Black Ops, GURPS Martial Arts, and some of GURPS Warehouse 24, some of GURPS Magic. The two big ones I probably contributed the most to were GURPS Martial Arts, me and my friend John Arruda, GURPS Cyberpunk, of course, and GURPS Time Travel. I contributed a ton of stuff to GURPS Time Travel. But around the time of GURPS Black Ops, I just kept arguing with them, and the direction GURPS was going was just like this, yeah. And so we stopped working together. Artisolian, I did a lot of stuff with Artisolian, especially with Fusion and Interlock, because I wanted there to be a interlock superhero role-playing game, because at the time I was like, this system could be used for anything. But I play tested and wrote stuff for Cyber Generation. I play tested and wrote stuff for the Chromebooks. I play tested and wrote stuff for the Dragon Ball DBZ RPG. I play tested and wrote stuff for Castle Falkenstein. I play tested and wrote stuff for Fusion. I wrote Fusion Supers and Fusion Psionics and Fusion Magic. Fusion became Silhouette, and for Silhouette I helped work on Champions the New Millennium, and some stuff for Heavy Gear. And then I went on and I did stuff, a game called Armageddon 2029, which I did over at CES Games and Anime. And if you can find a copy of Armageddon 2029, you will see that special thanks to CES Games and Anime, and you'll see the list of all of us who worked on it. My name's there. That went into me playtesting for D&D Next, which became D&D 5th edition. I also playtested with Kerry Solomon for his home game system, which became the Numenor system, which eventually became the whole thing that the Forge was based on, and all that player advocacy. So that eventually became, I guess, Powered by the Apocalypse in some forms, and games like that. I play tested and wrote the whole idea of hero points, or put a check on your paper. That all the way time travels back to my time with Matt Keating and Barry Osser at the FGU. And the very first time David Balbo and Matt Keating introduced the idea of player points, or put a check on your paper, or hero points, which would then be stolen by this guy, which would then be stolen by this guy, which would then be stolen by this guy, which would then be stolen by Carrie Solomon, who used, and that's just a strange, bizarre story. And I think TJ Storm is still using it in his game. So the Numenor game and the Numenor stuff, Jim Lampman and his stuff. I play tested some Magic cards. I play tested some other collectible card games, including the Talisman collectible card game. There was a space collectible card game that I play tested and did some stuff for. So yes, is my name in any of those still? My name is still in Cyber Generation, if you can find the first edition. My name is still in GURPS IST, GURPS Martial Arts, and GURPS Time Travel, at least in the older editions. I don't know if it is in the newer editions. My name is still on D&D Next list of playtesters, but then when D&D Next became 5th edition, my name is... I don't know if my name is on it anymore. My name is probably on a couple other things. I'm sure my name is on a bunch of stuff that I did for Space Gamer, Fantasy Gamer, bunch of stuff I did with Barry Osser and David Lawson for the Game Mechanic and the Game Trip and the Fantasy Gamers Guild newsletter. I did a lot of articles that were published in like Dragon Magazine and Space Gamer for Villains and Vigilantes. Of course, the Complete Cyberpunk Dictionary, the very first version of the Complete Cyberpunk Dictionary, which appeared in the Space Gamer, Fantasy Gamer, and later, I think, in one of the Chromebooks, I wrote that. So yes, I have been published, but of course, possibly my greatest, worst is this disaster, which eventually grew up to become Fusion. So there you go. So anybody who thinks I don't know what I'm talking about when I talk about the rules of drama, yes, because I've talked to Quentin Tarantino, I've talked to J. Michael Straczynski, I've talked to Kevin Smith, I've talked to Russell Embrick. Do any of these guys remember talking to me? Probably not. But yeah, published. Dave's video from 1989 to 2000. I was there. Yeah. Talk to you losers later. I'm published.